something a little somber. A time of fevers, remedies, and uncertain recovery. We're diving into what getting sick was really like during the Middle Ages. Forget the mystical healers and miracle cures you've heard about. You probably wouldn't survive a simple infection that today we treat with basic antibiotics. And I'll explain why tonight. So before you take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're hearing this from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to me seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background noise, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1347. The good news is you're alive. The bad news, your throat feels like you've swallowed broken glass. Your head pounds with each heartbeat, and your skin burns with fever. There's no medicine cabinet to reach for, no thermometer to check your temperature, no doctor to call. The room around you is dim, lit only by whatever daylight filters through the single small window of your one-room cottage. The air smells of smoke from last night's cooking fire, of damp straw from your mattress, of the sweat that now soaks your single woolen shirt, the same one you've worn for weeks now. They have work to do, fields that won't till themselves, animals that need tending, water that needs fetching. They can't spare much time for you, but your mother places a hand on your forehead, frowns slightly, and promises to gather some herbs on her way back from the stream. Your father mutters something about speaking to the village wise woman if you're not better by tomorrow. Your younger siblings are kept away from you, just in case what you have might spread to them. There is no real understanding of contagion, not as we know it, but people have observed that sickness can travel from person to person like an invisible curse. The mattress is stuffed with last season's straw, harvested months ago, now home to small insects and the occasional mouse. On better days, you might shoo them away, but today you lack the strength. The single woolen blanket that covers you is simultaneously too hot against your fever-sensitive skin and not warm enough to stop the shivers that rack your body. There is no comfortable position to find. The mattress has no give, no support for your aching body. It simply exists as a slightly softer alternative to the packed earth floor. The tea, if it can be called that, is made from herbs gathered from the forest edge. Perhaps some chamomile for its calming properties, some willow bark for the fever and pain, maybe some sage or rosemary, because these are thought to ward off sickness. Nobody knows exactly why or how these plants help, only that sometimes they seem to. The knowledge has been passed down, mother to daughter, father to son, an oral tradition of trial and error spanning countless generations. There is no sugar to mask the taste, no honey unless your family is fortunate enough to keep bees or trade for their honey. You drink because you must, because refusing medicine is not a luxury afforded to those who wish to see another season. Your mother nods approvingly as you finish, takes the cup, and returns to her tasks. There is sympathy in her eyes, but not excessive concern. Sickness is common, recovery uncertain. Her own mother lost 3 children before they reached adulthood. Her sister died in childbirth last winter. Illness is not an unexpected visitor, but a constant neighbor. You hear the distant lowing of cattle, the call of the village reeve organizing the day's work, the bark of dogs, the shouts of children playing in the narrow dirt paths between cottages. The world does not pause for your fever. The seasons will not wait for your recovery. If the crops are not tended, winter will bring hunger sharper than any fever's bite. There is no medicine to reduce the fever quickly, no throat lozenges to numb the pain, no ibuprofen to dull the ache in your joints and head. There is only time, the bitter tea, and the hope that your body's own defenses will eventually overcome whatever invader causes your suffering. Toward evening, the village wise woman arrives. She is not called a doctor or a nurse. Such formal titles belong to university-trained men in distant cities, not to elderly women in rural villages. But she has seen more sickness, more recovery, more death than anyone else in your community. Her hands are gnarled from years of gathering herbs, mixing poultices, attending difficult births. Her eyes miss nothing as she studies your face, your breathing, the color of your skin. She looks at your tongue, your eyes, the color of your lips. She asks simple questions. Where does it hurt? When did it start? Have you been able to take water? Have your bowels moved? The questions are practical, based on observation, rather than any formal understanding of human anatomy or disease. The four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, are believed to govern health. Your sickness is likely an imbalance of these mysterious substances. The wise woman nods to herself, reaches into a small leather pouch she carries, and produces several dried herbs, some crushed to rough powder. She instructs your mother to make a stronger tea, to apply a poultice to your chest, to ensure you drink water even if you don't wish to. There is no prescription to be filled, no exact dosage to be measured. The instructions are imprecise by modern standards. A handful of this, enough of that to cover the palm. Boil until the water turns the color of autumn leaves. Your small home grows darker, the only light coming from the central hearth, where a modest fire burns. Wood is precious, not to be wasted, but the warmth is deemed necessary for your recovery. Your father adds a small log before settling on his own straw mattress across the room. Your siblings curl together under shared blankets, their breathing eventually steadying into sleep. Your mother takes the first watch by your side, a common practice when illness threatens. The night is divided into shifts. She will wake your father halfway through to take over. Sleep is sacrificed for vigilance. The saints your family prays to seem to visit, their faces like the painted wooden figures in the village church, their voices indistinguishable from your father's or the priest's. You see the Virgin Mary with your mother's tired eyes, Saint Roch with his plague sores resembling the marks you once saw on a traveler who was quickly turned away from your village. These fever dreams are not considered entirely separate from reality. Many believe that the ill exist closer to the spirit world, that their visions may carry messages or warnings. Your skin is cool and damp, your shift soaked with sweat. This is seen as a good sign, the sickness leaving your body, the imbalanced humors finding their proper levels again. You are weak, thirsty, hunger gnawing at your stomach for the first time in days. These too are welcomed as signs of recovery. Your mother brings thin gruel made from the same grain that will become bread when you are stronger. There is no special sick food, no canned soup, no saltine crackers, no ginger ale. There is only what the family always eats, perhaps prepared to be easier to swallow. The day after, maybe you can step outside to feel the sun. There is no calling in sick. Your absence from the fields or from your chores is felt by everyone who must work harder to compensate. Children recover their strength more quickly than adults, a blessing in a world where small hands are needed for countless tasks. She recommends continued rest, more of the bitter tea, perhaps some special food if it can be spared, an egg from the family's precious hens, a bit of honey if available. These are not prescribed for their nutritional content as we understand it today, but because they are observed to help recovery, to bring strength back to weak limbs. The fields have been tended, water fetched, bread baked, animals fed. Life has gone on as it must. Your family is relieved at your recovery, but not surprised. Either outcome, death or life, would have been accepted as God's will. There is joy, but not the overwhelming relief that might accompany recovery in a time where death from simple infection is rare. Here, survival is never guaranteed. Each year of life a gift not to be taken for granted. Your illness has been relatively simple. A fever, a sore throat, perhaps what we would now call strep throat or a viral infection. It could have been worse, much worse. The true terrors that stalk medieval villages have names that inspire dread even centuries later. Plague, smallpox, consumption. These are the illnesses that empty homes, that leave children orphaned and fields untended. Against these greater foes, the wise woman's herbs and your mother's care would likely prove insufficient. Your body's own defenses, perhaps aided by the willow bark's natural salicylates, though nobody understands this chemical reality, have overcome the infection. The fever has done its work, burning out whatever invader took hold in your throat and blood. You live to work another day, to eventually marry, to have children of your own who will face the same uncertain medical prospects that you have. There is no record kept of your sickness, no chart documenting your temperature curve, no prescription history to reference if it returns. There is only the added knowledge your family now possesses, that the bitter tea seemed to help, that cool cloths eased your fever, that you recovered after 4 days of rest. This knowledge joins the vast oral archive of folkways and remedies, the accumulated wisdom of generations living close to the edge of survival. The wise woman recommended willow bark and chamomile. You recovered in good time, and so the knowledge passes, informal, inexact, but not without value. What works is remembered and repeated. What fails is also remembered, but as a caution rather than a recommendation. This pattern, illness, treatment based on tradition and observation, recovery or death, knowledge passed on, is the foundation of medicine long before the scientific method, before controlled studies, before microscopes revealed the true causes of infection. It is medicine based on correlation rather than understood causation, on patterns observed over generations rather than laboratory results. And yet, it is not without its successes. Many of the herbs used by your mother and the village wise woman contain compounds we now isolate and study in pharmaceutical laboratories. Willow bark contains the precursor to aspirin. Certain molds, sometimes used in poultices, contain natural antibiotics. Honey, when available, does indeed have antimicrobial properties. These These remedies were not used because medieval people understood their chemical properties, but because generations of trial and error had shown them to be effective, at least sometimes. But the limitations of this knowledge are severe and often fatal. A simple cut while working in the fields might introduce bacteria that modern antibiotics would easily defeat. Without this protection, infection might spread, turning the skin red, then black, bringing fever, delirium, and often death. Childbirth, a dangerous passage even with modern medicine, was significantly more perilous. Internal injuries or illnesses, appendicitis, cancer, organ failure, offered almost no hope of treatment beyond pain relief and comfort. Illness might be attributed to bad air, miasma, believed to carry sickness from swamps or decomposing matter. It might be seen as divine punishment for individual or community sin. It could be blamed on an imbalance of the four humors, requiring treatments to restore proper balance, bloodletting to reduce excess blood, emetics to purge excess bile. Some illnesses were attributed to the alignment of stars and planets, others to the presence of malevolent spirits, or the evil eye. These explanatory frameworks were not merely superstition. They were comprehensive attempts to make sense of the patterns of illness observed over centuries. They were theories that seemed to explain why some people fell ill while others remained healthy, why some seasons brought more sickness than others, why some recoveries seemed miraculous, while other patients declined despite all efforts. Without microscopes to reveal bacteria and viruses, without blood tests to show the markers of disease, without imaging technology to peer inside the body, these frameworks provided the best available explanations for the frightening randomness of illness. When you fall ill again, as you inevitably will, the approach to your treatment will depend largely on the symptoms you display and the current explanatory framework favored by those caring for you. If the priest has greater influence than the wise woman, prayers and perhaps exorcism might be attempted alongside herbal remedies. If humoral theory dominates, you might be bled to reduce fever or given emetics to purge excess bile. If miasma theory holds sway, your windows might be sealed against night air, believed to carry sickness, potentially depriving you of fresh air that might actually help your recovery. The medieval approach to medicine is not monolithic. It varies considerably across Europe, changing with time, location, and cultural influences. In some regions, particularly those with connections to the Islamic world or Byzantine Empire, medical knowledge might be more sophisticated, preserving elements of ancient Greek and Roman medical texts lost to Western Europe during the early medieval period. Monasteries often serve as repositories of written medical knowledge, with monk physicians developing more systematic approaches than village healers. In cities, guilds of barber surgeons offer services ranging from bloodletting to tooth extraction to treatment of wounds. But in your rural village, far from centers of learning, medicine remains largely in the hands of local women with knowledge passed through generations. Their understanding is practical rather than theoretical, focused on what can be observed and what has worked before. They know that certain plants ease pain, that others reduce fever, that some help wounds close cleanly, while others cause dangerous reactions. This knowledge is valuable even when the underlying mechanisms remain mysterious. As you move through the seasons of your medieval life, you develop your own relationship with illness and recovery, You learn which symptoms might pass on their own and which require immediate attention. You observe which family remedies seem effective for which conditions. You note the times of year when certain sicknesses sweep through the village: the coughing illness of winter, the fever of late summer, the digestive troubles that come with the first fruit of the season, eaten before full ripeness. Those who survive childhood illnesses often develop immunities that protect them later. Your village might be devastated by an epidemic that sweeps through, claiming the young, the elderly, the already weak. But those who survive carry antibodies that may offer protection when the disease returns years later. This pattern of illness, death, and eventual immunity plays out across generations, with no one understanding the biological mechanisms at work. The physical environment of your home works against health by modern standards. The single room is smoky from the central hearth, the smoke exiting through an opening in the roof, or simply filtering through the thatch. This constant smoke irritates lungs and eyes, but also serves to repel some insects that might otherwise infest the thatch. The earthen floor retains dampness, the walls provide minimal insulation against cold, and the single small window offers little ventilation or natural light. Your winter diet contributes to health vulnerabilities. Fresh vegetables are scarce, fruits non-existent, except for what might have been dried or preserved. The diet shifts to stored grain, perhaps becoming moldy as winter progresses, and whatever meat can be preserved through smoking or salting. This limited diet, lacking the vitamins we now know are essential, leaves you vulnerable to deficiency diseases: scurvy from lack of vitamin C, night blindness from insufficient vitamin A, weakened immunity from general malnutrition. Heating the small home requires precious fuel, wood that must be gathered and dried, perhaps supplemented with dried dung if wood is scarce. The choice often becomes whether to maintain warmth at the expense of increased smoke, or to endure colder temperatures with less smoke. Neither option is ideal for respiratory health. Chilblains and frostbite affect fingers and toes. The elderly and very young are particularly vulnerable to the cold, their bodies less able to maintain core temperature. Herbs that might be readily available in summer must be used from dried stores, their potency potentially diminished. The wise woman might be unable to visit if snow or mud makes the paths impassable. The cold itself can mask or exacerbate fever symptoms, making it difficult to assess whether treatments are working. The general weakness from limited diet makes recovery more difficult, the body having fewer reserves to draw upon. The human body demonstrates a remarkable resilience, often recovering from infections and injuries that would seem to require modern intervention. The immune system, though not understood, works to fight off pathogens. The body's ability to heal wounds, to generate new blood cells, to adapt to changing conditions serves as the primary medicine, with herbal treatments and care practices playing supporting roles. When spring returns, bringing its slow warming and renewal, health often improves across the village. The return of fresh green plants to the diet, wild herbs and vegetables gathered before garden crops mature, provides vitamins and minerals missing during winter months. Increased sunshine allows for vitamin D production in the skin, strengthening bones and immunity without anyone understanding this process. The mere ability to spend time outdoors, away from the the smoke-filled confines of winter quarters benefits respiratory health. Your knowledge of medicinal plants expands each year. Children in your village begin learning useful plants almost as soon as they can walk. Which berries are safe to eat, which leaves can soothe a sting, which roots might help with pain. By adulthood, most people can identify dozens of plants with medical applications, understanding when and how to harvest them, how to prepare them, which parts are useful and which might be harmful. This practical knowledge, though not systematized or written, represents a sophisticated understanding of the local natural pharmacy. The annual cycle continues. Health generally better in summer and early autumn, when food is plentiful and diverse, declining through winter when confinement, smoke, cold, and dietary limitations take their toll. Certain illnesses have their seasons: respiratory infections in winter, digestive troubles in late summer, fevers that seem to travel from village to village in patterns observed but not understood. Infant mortality claims many before their first birthday. Childhood diseases that now prompt a quick visit to the pediatrician might prove fatal. Women face the additional danger of childbirth, with each pregnancy representing a significant mortality risk. Men face injuries from physical labor, from occasional violence, from accidents with tools and animals. Those who survive to old age, perhaps 50 or 60 by modern reckoning, are respected for their endurance and knowledge, but often suffer chronic pain, diminished mobility, poor vision and hearing, dental issues that make eating difficult. Yet amid this challenging health landscape, there are moments of surprising effectiveness in medieval medicine. Bone setters in villages often develop considerable skill in treating fractures, using splints and bindings that follow principles still recognized in modern orthopedics. Midwives accumulate knowledge about easing difficult births, recognizing dangerous presentations, supporting recovery post-delivery. Herbalists identify effective pain relievers, anti-inflammatories, digestive aids, and topical antiseptics through generations of careful observation. Surgery exists in limited forms, practiced by specialists in larger towns, setting bones, lancing abscesses, removing bladder stones, performing amputations when limbs are beyond saving. These procedures are performed without anesthesia, beyond alcohol, opium, or herbs with sedative properties. They rely on speed to minimize suffering, on knowledge passed through apprenticeship rather than formal education. Infection represents the greatest risk after such procedures, its cause unknown, and its treatment largely ineffective. Tooth decay from bread made with stone ground flour, containing tiny stone particles, from naturally occurring sugars in fruits and honey, and from general lack of dental hygiene, leads to pain, abscesses, and eventual tooth loss. Extraction is the primary treatment, performed by barbers or blacksmiths using specialized tools. The pain of toothache drives some to desperate measures, holding cloves against the painful tooth, applying hot needles to kill the nerve, consuming strong alcohol to dull awareness. Mental illness receives various interpretations depending on its manifestation and the dominant beliefs of the community. Some behaviors we would now recognize as symptoms of mental illness might be attributed to demonic possession, to sin, to melancholic temperament, to the effects of phases of the moon. Other conditions might be seen simply as aspects of an individual's personality. The person who has always been unusually sad, unusually fearful, unusually angry. Treatment ranges from prayer and exorcism to herbal sedatives to physical restraint in cases of violent behavior. Throughout all these health challenges, the community plays a crucial role that modern medicine often overlooks. Extended families share the burden of caring for the ill. Neighbors contribute food or labor when sickness prevents work. The church provides spiritual comfort and sometimes material support. The ill are rarely isolated, except in cases of visibly contagious conditions. They remain integrated in family and community life, even as their activities are limited by their condition. This community involvement serves not only practical purposes, but psychological ones as well. The ill person is not removed to a sterile, unfamiliar environment, as in a modern hospital. They remain surrounded by familiar people, sights, sounds, and smells. Their care is provided by those who know them intimately, who can recognize subtle changes in condition, who understand their preferences and fears. This integration may provide forms of comfort and support that complement the limited medical interventions available. Religious practices intertwine with medical ones, neither fully separate from the other. Prayers for healing accompany herbal remedies. Saints associated with particular conditions are invoked. Saint Blaise for throat ailments, Saint Apollonia for dental pain, Saint Roche for plague. Pilgrimages to shrines associated with miraculous healings represent both spiritual practice and medical seeking, undertaken when local remedies prove insufficient. Churches maintain hospices for the ill, especially those without family to care for them, combining physical care with spiritual ministration. Pain is expected, its complete absence unusual beyond early childhood. Chronic conditions, arthritis, respiratory problems, digestive disorders, old injuries that never fully healed, are accommodated rather than cured. People learn to work despite pain, to adjust activities to accommodate limitations, to find ways of contributing to family and community, even when health fails. This is not stoicism as philosophical choice, but necessity in a world where full physical wellness is rare beyond youth. When death comes, as it eventually must, it rarely arrives in isolation. The family gathers around the deathbed when possible, offering comfort, witnessing the passing, beginning the rituals that will transition the person from the community of the living to that of the dead. The physical process of dying is familiar to most adults and even children. There are few shielded from this reality in a world where death frequently occurs at home. Last rites provide spiritual preparation and comfort, not only to the dying, but to those who will survive them. The medical knowledge that developed through these centuries of observation, trial, error, and oral transmission did not disappear with the advent of modern scientific medicine. Many of the plant-based remedies used by your medieval village healer eventually found their way into pharmacopoeias, their active compounds identified, isolated, and studied. The willow bark that eased your fever contains salicin, the forerunner of aspirin. The moldy bread sometimes applied to wounds contained primitive antibiotics. The foxglove used carefully for certain heart conditions contained digitalis. Modern medicine did not so much replace this folk knowledge as systematize it. understand its mechanisms, standardize its dosages, and complement it with new discoveries. Spring offers fresh greens, but also increased physical labor that risks injury. Summer provides abundant food, but also waterborne illnesses from wells and streams that warm and sometimes stagnate. Autumn brings harvest abundance, but also accidents as people work to the point of exhaustion, gathering and preserving food for winter. And winter returns with its confinement, its smoke, its dietary limitations, its cold that stresses the body's reserves. Through all these cycles, people observe, learn, adapt. They notice which injuries heal cleanly and which fester, though they cannot see the microscopic bacteria that make the difference. They observe which foods seem to strengthen and which to weaken, though they know nothing of vitamins or micronutrients. They recognize patterns in who recovers and who succumbs, though they attribute these differences to divine will or humoral balance, rather than genetic factors or comorbidities. This knowledge, accumulated slowly through generations of painful experience, represents a form of science, not with controlled experiments and peer-reviewed publications, but with careful observation, pattern recognition, and practical application. It is medicine without microscopes or laboratories, but not without intelligence or effectiveness. It is healthcare without hospitals or clinics, but not without compassion or community support. When you wake tomorrow, perhaps still weak from your recent fever, but returning to strength, you will rejoin a world that accepts illness as inevitable, but not invincible. You will carry forward the knowledge gained during your recovery, which herbs seem to help, which foods you could tolerate, how long the fever lasted before breaking. This knowledge becomes part of your personal medical wisdom, to be applied when illness next visits your home. And so it continues, this slow accumulation of medical knowledge, passed from generation to generation, gradually separating what works from what does not, identifying patterns without always understanding causes, developing treatments based on observation rather than theory. It is an approach to medicine dictated by necessity in a world without laboratories or imaging technology, without sterilization or antibiotics. It is the medicine of careful attention, of trial and error, of inherited wisdom, of making do with what is available. The herbs that grow along the village paths, the honey from kept bees, the minerals found in certain soils and springs, the foods available in each season, these form the medieval pharmacopoeia. The knowledge of when to use them, how to prepare them, which to combine and which to keep separate, constitutes a complex medical system that, while limited by modern standards, represents the best available care for centuries of human history. You learn which childhood illnesses tend to protect against future occurrences of the same sickness, though you cannot name the antibodies involved. You observe that certain conditions seem to run in families, the mother and daughter who both struggle to breathe in certain seasons, the father and sons who all develop painful joints earlier than their peers. You notice that wounds heal better when cleaned with boiled water, rather than water taken directly from the stream, though you attribute this to the water's virtue, rather than to the killing of bacteria. This practical knowledge serves you throughout your life, helping you care for yourself, your family, eventually your own children. It is not infallible. Some illnesses defy all treatments. Some wounds refuse to heal cleanly. Some births end in tragedy despite the midwife's best efforts. But it is far from useless, representing the distilled wisdom of countless observations across generations. The village-wise woman may recognize early symptoms and recommend isolation of the affected household, an effective public health measure, even without understanding the role of fleas and rats in transmission. Herbs with mild antiseptic or fever-reducing properties might ease some symptoms, but cannot stop the disease's progression. Prayer and procession, while offering spiritual comfort, may actually increase transmission as people gather together. In the face of such devastating illness, the limitations of medieval medicine become starkly apparent. Those who can flee to unaffected areas do so, but many remain to tend the ill, to bury the dead, to maintain what community function is possible. The acceptance of death as part of life's cycle helps cope with losses that would devastate modern sensibilities. The family that loses multiple children in a single week. The village reduced by 1/3 of its population in a single season. This is not indifference, but a necessary adaptation to a reality where such losses, while tragic, are not unexpected. The midwife brings her knowledge of easing labor, of turning breech babies when possible, of managing bleeding after delivery. She may use ergot to control hemorrhage, knowing from experience the careful balance between effective dose and dangerous excess, though she doesn't understand the pharmacology involved. She recommends specific herbs to help milk production, others to ease the pain of engorgement, still others if fever develops after birth, each representing observed effectiveness over generations. Broken bones, common in a life of physical labor, receive attention from those with experience in setting and binding them. Limbs are straightened, aligned, and immobilized with wooden splints and linen bindings. Recovery expectations are practical. The bone will heal, but perfect function may not return, particularly with complicated fractures. Adaptations are made, tools modified, tasks reassigned, techniques adjusted to accommodate permanent limitations from improperly healed injuries. Wounds from tools, from animal encounters, from occasional violence, are cleaned with whatever is available. Boiled water if possible, wine or ale which offers some antiseptic properties, urine which, while seeming unsanitary to modern understanding, actually contains urea that can help clean wounds. Poultices of certain plants, comfrey, yarrow, calendula, are applied to wounds. Their modest antimicrobial or anti-inflammatory properties, sometimes making the difference between healing and infection. Digestive ailments, from simple overeating to more serious dysentery, receive treatment from the family's own knowledge stores before the wise woman is consulted. Mint and chamomile ease milder stomach troubles. Blackberry root or oak bark tea helps control diarrhea through their astringent properties. More serious conditions might prompt desperate measures. Drinking clay mixed with water to absorb toxins, consuming charcoal from the fire, restricted diets of the blandest available foods until symptoms subside. Eye conditions, potentially devastating in a world where manual labor is the primary means of survival, receive particular attention. Conjunctivitis might be treated with eye-bright tea as a wash, its mild astringent properties sometimes helping to reduce inflammation. Eyesight deterioration with age is accepted as inevitable, with few remedies available beyond adjusting activities to accommodate failing vision. Cataracts, when they develop, eventually lead to blindness, with surgery attempted only by specialized practitioners in larger communities, the results highly uncertain. Skin conditions, rashes, boils, fungal infections are treated with a variety of preparations, some more effective than others. Honey, with its antimicrobial properties, might be applied to boils. Sulfur, obtained from mineral springs or through trade, proves effective against some fungal conditions. Oatmeal baths soothe irritated skin. Witch hazel reduces inflammation. Each remedy is matched to observable symptoms. The treatments refined through generations of trial and error. Willow bark provides salicin for headaches and general pain. Meadowsweet offers similar compounds. Henbane, deadly nightshade, and poppy all provide stronger pain relief, but are used cautiously. Their potential toxicity well understood through bitter experience. Physical methods, hot compresses, cold applications, massage, complement these plant-based pain relievers, offering additional comfort without pharmaceutical intervention. Sleep disturbances, though perhaps less formally recognized than in our insomniac modern culture, receive attention through herbs with mild sedative properties. Valerian, hops, chamomile, passion flower, all find their way into evening teas for those struggling with pain, worry, or age-related sleep difficulties. The effectiveness of these remedies varies, but they offer some comfort in a world where sleep often comes in shorter stretches than our modern expectation of unbroken 8-hour nights. Psychological distress, what we might now label as anxiety, depression, or post-traumatic stress, receives varied responses depending on its manifestation and the community's explanatory framework. Melancholy might be attributed to an imbalance of black bile, treated with herbs believed to correct this humoral imbalance. Persistent fears might be addressed through prayer, protective talismans, or community reassurance. Unusual behaviors might prompt consultation with religious authorities if demonic influence is suspected, or with the wise woman if a physical cause seems more likely. The medical care available to your medieval community represents neither the completely ineffective superstition sometimes portrayed in modern accounts, nor anything approaching the effectiveness of contemporary healthcare. It occupies a middle ground, a complex system of knowledge and practice that included elements we now recognize as scientifically sound, alongside approaches we would consider misguided or even harmful. It was the best available care developed by intelligent people, making careful observations without the benefit of modern scientific theory or technology. You will use the remedies taught by your parents, supplemented by your own observations and experiences. You will evaluate symptoms based on what you've seen before, adjusting treatments according to their apparent effectiveness. You will pray for recovery while applying herbal poultices, seeing no contradiction between spiritual and physical interventions. You will accept certain limitations, chronic conditions that can be managed but not cured, injuries that leave permanent disability, gradual deterioration with age, while still doing everything possible to maintain health and function. This approach to illness and healing, so different from our modern expectation of diagnosis, treatment, and cure, shaped not only physical health outcomes but cultural attitudes toward the body, toward suffering, toward mortality itself. the acceptance of the physical limitation and pain as normal aspects of human experience, the integration of the ill within community rather than their isolation in medical institutions, the understanding of healing as a process involving spiritual and community dimensions alongside physical interventions. All these represent not simply the absence of modern medicine, but the presence of a different framework for understanding health and illness. Your experience of illness and recovery becomes part of the collective knowledge of your household and community. The specifics of your case, which remedies seemed to help, how long recovery took, which symptoms appeared in which order, might be referenced when someone else falls ill with similar complaints. Your individual medical history becomes one small data point in the vast, unwritten medical record of your community, contributing to the slow refinement of treatment approaches across generations. The rhythm of illness, treatment, and recovery beats steadily through medieval life, as constant as the seasons, as varied as the weather. Some recoveries seem miraculous, defying expectations and reinforcing faith in particular remedies or interventions. Some illnesses prove fatal despite every effort, reinforcing the understanding of health as ultimately subject to forces beyond human control. Between these extremes lie the countless ordinary experiences of sickness and healing, the fevers that break after several anxious days, the wounds that gradually close and heal, the digestive troubles that resolve with careful diet and herbal teas. This medical reality shapes daily decisions, seasonal planning, community structure. Food preservation techniques balance flavor and nutrition with prevention of spoilage that might cause illness. Housing design, limited by available materials and technology, still incorporates features intended to promote health. Roof openings to reduce smoke, strategic window placement to allow light without too much heat loss, raised sleeping platforms to reduce exposure to dampness and ground dwelling. Insects, community practices, sharing care for the ill, supporting households when primary workers are sick, maintaining isolation of visibly contagious individuals, represent public health measures developed through observation rather than formal study. When your children are born, you pass to them not only genetic traits, but this accumulated medical wisdom. You teach them which plants heal and which harm, how to recognize the early signs of serious illness, which treatments to try first for common complaints, when to seek help from those with specialized knowledge. This transmission happens not through formal lessons, but through daily life, watching you gather specific herbs when someone has a cough, helping you prepare a poultice for a sprained ankle, observing which foods are withheld during digestive upsets, and which are offered during recovery from fever. This knowledge transmission represents one of the most effective aspects of medieval healthcare, not the specific treatments, many of which had limited efficacy by modern standards, but the community-wide understanding of basic health maintenance and illness response. Everyone from children to elders knows the rudiments of wound cleaning, the importance of fluids during fever, the progression of common illnesses, the plants with medicinal properties growing along familiar paths. This distributed medical knowledge means that even without professional healthcare providers, basic medical attention is usually available within the immediate family or neighborhood. The child born with a heart defect, the adult who develops an internal cancer, the elders suffering from what we would now recognize as Alzheimer's disease. These individuals receive care based on managing observable symptoms, rather than addressing underlying causes that remain mysterious. Their conditions may be attributed to divine will, to malevolent magic, to sins in this life or a previous one, to the alignment of planets at birth, explanations that offer meaning if not effective treatment. Yet even with these limitations, medieval communities developed sophisticated systems for caring for those with chronic illness or disability. Extended family structures meant that individuals who could not fully support themselves through labor could still contribute according to their abilities while receiving needed support. Community obligations often included provision for widows, orphans, and those physically unable to work. Monasteries and churches maintained almshouses and hospices for those without family support. These systems, while falling far short of modern social safety nets, recognized the reality that illness and disability were common and required community response. This balanced understanding of medieval healthcare, recognizing both its genuine achievements and its significant limitations, offers perspective on our modern medical experience. The scientific advances of recent centuries have transformed human health possibilities, extending lifespans and eliminating or controlling diseases that devastated earlier populations. Yet aspects of medieval approaches to health and illness may offer valuable insights for contemporary healthcare. The integration of the ill within community rather than their isolation, the widespread distribution of basic medical knowledge, the understanding of healing as a process involving spiritual and social dimensions alongside physical interventions. Injuries accumulate, some healing completely, others leaving permanent limitations that shape your activities. Chronic conditions develop and progress, managed as best possible with available remedies. The knowledge passed to you by parents and community is supplemented by your own observations and experiences, creating a personal medical wisdom that serves you and those you care for. This lived experience of health and illness in medieval Europe, so different from our modern expectation of diagnosis, treatment, and cure, shaped not only physical outcomes, but cultural attitudes toward the body, toward suffering, toward mortality itself. The acceptance of physical limitation and pain as normal aspects of human experience, the integration of illness within daily life rather than its separation into medical institutions, the understanding of healing as a process involving spiritual and community dimensions alongside physical interventions. All these represent not simply the absence of modern medicine, but the presence of a different framework for understanding health and illness. In your medieval village, as evening approaches and your strength gradually returns after your fever, you rejoin the rhythm of community life, modified by your recent illness, but not fundamentally disrupted by it. Your family adjusts tasks to accommodate your recovering strength. Neighbors who helped during your illness are thanked with promises of reciprocal aid when needed. The wise woman who provided remedies receives modest payment, perhaps eggs from your hens, perhaps help with harvesting her garden when you are fully recovered. The priest includes thanks for your recovery in Sunday prayers. Illness does not remove you to a separate medical space staffed by strangers. Recovery does not happen in isolation from daily rhythms. Both occur within the context of family and community, visible to all, part of the shared experience that binds the village together across generations. Your illness becomes part of the village's collective medical knowledge, your recovery part of its shared history. As darkness falls and your family prepares for sleep, the fire banked low to last through the night, you take your place on the straw mattress that held you through fevered days and nights. Your body, still weakened but healing, surrenders to sleep more easily than in recent days. The familiar sounds of family breathing, the occasional animal noise from outside, the crackle of the fire, these form the soundtrack of recovery, as much a part of healing as the bitter herbs and cool cloths that eased your fever. Tomorrow will bring a return to normal activities, perhaps still modified by lingering weakness, but moving toward full participation in the work that sustains your household and community. The illness that confined you becomes memory, one episode in the long relationship with health and sickness that defines human experience in any era. The knowledge gained, which remedies helped, how long recovery took, which symptoms appeared in which order, becomes part of your personal and family medical wisdom, contributing to the slow refinement of treatment approaches across generations. This rhythm of illness, treatment, and recovery continues through medieval life, as constant as the seasons, as varied as the weather. Some recoveries seem miraculous, defying expectations and reinforcing faith in particular remedies or interventions. Some illnesses prove fatal despite every effort, reinforcing the understanding of health as ultimately subject to forces beyond human control. Between these extremes lie the countless ordinary experiences of sickness and healing, the fevers that break after several anxious days, the wounds that gradually close and heal, the digestive troubles that resolve with careful diet and herbal teas. The changing seasons bring their own patterns of illness, recognized by your community without understanding of the underlying causes. Winter brings coughs and fevers, spread easily in the close confines of smoke-filled homes where families gather for warmth. Spring brings its own fevers, different in character from winter's respiratory complaints, often accompanied by rashes that appear and fade in patterns observed but not understood. Summer brings digestive troubles, as food spoils more quickly in the heat, as water sources grow lower and less pure. Autumn brings injuries from the harvest work, exhaustion that leaves bodies vulnerable to whatever illness passes through the community. Winter respiratory complaints might be treated with syrups made from pine resin and honey, with teas of thyme and sage, with steam from water boiled with pine needles and mint. The spring fevers and rashes might prompt teas of birch bark or willow, poultices of crushed herbs applied to the skin, baths in water infused with soothing plants. Summer's digestive troubles call for restrictive diets, for teas of blackberry leaf or oak bark to control diarrhea, for more frequent but smaller meals to avoid overtaxing the system. Autumn's injuries receive poultices to reduce swelling, plant oils to keep wounds from drying and cracking, teas for pain and inflammation. These seasonal responses become part of the annual rhythm of life, as expected as the planting and harvest, the religious festivals, the rotation of agricultural tasks. Remedies are prepared in advance, herbs gathered in their prime and dried for winter use, pine resin collected and stored, roots harvested at the time when their medicinal properties are strongest. This preparation represents a form of preventive medicine, an acknowledgement that certain health needs can be anticipated and planned for. The initial phase, discomfort, unease, the sense that something is not right, might be met with simple remedies kept in every household. If these prove insufficient and the illness progresses, more specialized knowledge might be sought from the village wise woman or the monk physician if one is available. If the condition continues to worsen, spiritual interventions might be added, special prayers, promises of offerings if recovery occurs. Perhaps, in severe cases, a pilgrimage to a shrine associated with healing miracles. Throughout this progression, the ill person remains integrated in the household and community, their care provided primarily by family members with occasional visits from those with specialized knowledge. This integration serves practical purposes. Specialized medical facilities don't exist outside of large cities and religious institutions, but also emotional and spiritual ones. The ill person is not removed from familiar surroundings, from the comfort of known voices and touches, from the spiritual protection of home and family. There is no expectation of cure for conditions we would now recognize as arthritis, asthma, epilepsy, or diabetes. Instead, these conditions become part of the individual's identity, accommodated rather than treated, managed with palliative remedies rather than targeted interventions. The person who struggles to breathe learns which activities and conditions trigger episodes, which plants seem to ease the tightness in the chest, how to structure work to accommodate this limitation. The person whose joints ache with changing weather plans tasks accordingly, uses poultices and teas to reduce pain, perhaps eventually takes on different responsibilities within the household or community as mobility decreases. This acceptance of chronic illness and disability as normal variations in human experience shapes community expectations and structures. Work is assigned based on ability, with the understanding that few reach old age without some limitation. Damaged joints from years of labor, diminished eyesight, chronic pain from old injuries, breathing difficulties from decades of exposure to smoke and dust. The elder whose hands are too gnarled for field work might instead watch children process wool or share knowledge with younger generations. The young adult whose seizures make certain tasks dangerous might be given alternative responsibilities that pose less risk. Children born with visible disabilities, or who develop them early in life, find their place within the family and community economy based on their abilities rather than their limitations. The child who cannot walk might develop exceptional skill with handcrafts. The child who cannot hear might excel at tasks requiring visual attention to detail. The child with developmental disabilities might perform simple but necessary tasks under family supervision. This integration is not based on modern concepts of inclusion or rights, but on the practical necessity of having every community member contribute according to their capacity. Some conditions might be attributed to events during pregnancy, a fright experienced by the mother, exposure to harmful influences, the alignment of stars and planets at conception or birth. Others might be seen as divine punishment for sin, whether of the affected individual or of parents or ancestors. Still, others might be explained through the theory of humors, imbalances in the fundamental substances, believed to constitute the human body and determine health and temperament. These explanatory frameworks, while lacking the scientific accuracy of modern medical understanding, provide meaning and context for suffering. They offer narratives that help make sense of why one person falls ill while another remains healthy, why some recover quickly while others linger or succumb. They situate individual medical experiences within broader understandings of how the world functions, how the divine interacts with the human, how the seen and unseen influence each other. If illness is attributed to sin, confession and penance might be prescribed alongside herbal remedies. If humoral imbalance is suspected, treatments focus on restoring proper balance. Foods, herbs, and practices believed to correct excess or deficiency in particular humors. If astrological influences are blamed, remedies might be timed to correspond with favorable planetary alignments, or include materials associated with the counterbalancing celestial forces. These varied approaches do not represent confusion or inconsistency, but rather a complex medical system that addresses multiple dimensions of human experience: physical, spiritual, cosmological. The medieval understanding of health encompasses aspects that modern medicine has largely separated or relegated to complementary approaches. The relationship between physical and spiritual well-being, the influence of community and environment on individual health, the role of meaning in narrative, and in the experience of illness and healing. The physical symptoms that initially manifested, heat, pain, weakness, have subsided through some combination of your body's natural healing processes and the remedies provided by your mother and the village wise woman. The spiritual dimension has been addressed through prayers offered by family members, perhaps promises made for offerings of thanks once recovery is complete. The community dimension continues as neighbors check on your progress, perhaps bringing small gifts of particularly nourishing food to speed recovery, offering to take on certain tasks until your strength fully returns. The experience of illness has temporarily altered your place in the household and community, but not removed you from either. As strength returns, you gradually resume normal activities, perhaps still excused from the most strenuous tasks, but increasingly engaged in the work that sustains your family. There is no formal declaration of recovery, no medical release to return to full activity, just the gradual resumption of normal functioning as the body heals itself with whatever support the available remedies have provided. This gradual return to normal activities reflects another aspect of medieval medical understanding: the recognition that healing takes time, that the body recovers at its own pace, rather than according to external schedules. There is no expectation of immediate return to full function after illness, no pressure to resume normal activities before strength has fully returned. The community accommodates the time needed for complete recovery, understanding that premature return to strenuous work might trigger relapse or leave lasting weakness. This patience with the healing process contrasts with modern expectations of quick recovery, of immediate return to productivity after illness. The medieval approach, born of necessity in a world without antibiotics or advanced surgical techniques, acknowledges the body's own timeline for healing, the need for rest and reduced activity during recovery, the gradual rebuilding of strength through increasingly demanding activities rather than immediate resumption of full effort. When the next illness visits your household, perhaps a child with a fever similar to yours, perhaps an elder with winter cough, perhaps a spouse with injury from field work, you apply the knowledge gained through your own recent experience, alongside that passed down through generations. You note which remedies seem to help in your case, which might be appropriate for this different situation, which symptoms suggest improvement or worsening. This ongoing accumulation of personal medical experience supplements the community knowledge passed through oral tradition, refining understanding of how bodies respond to various remedies and conditions. The rhythms of day and night, of seasons, of human life cycles, from birth through childhood, adulthood, elderhood, and eventually death, provide the framework within which these medical experiences unfold. Unlike modern healthcare with its artificial lighting and climate control, its ability to perform complex procedures regardless of time or season, medieval medicine remains deeply connected to these natural rhythms. Certain herbs must be gathered at specific times of day or night to maximize their properties. Some treatments are more effective in particular seasons. The body itself responds differently to illness, depending on the surrounding conditions. The same fever might progress differently in winter's cold or summer's heat. Different approaches to illness apply at different life stages, reflecting both practical reality and cultural understanding. Infant and childhood illnesses receive particular attention, given the high mortality rates in these vulnerable years. Adolescent health focuses on supporting the transition to adult work responsibilities. Reproductive health, for women during pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum periods, for men in maintaining the strength needed for physically demanding labor, receives attention proportional to its importance for family and community survival. Elder health emphasizes comfort and continued contribution rather than extension of life at all costs. Unlike the modern medicalization of death, often occurring in institutional settings, sometimes prolonged through interventions that extend biological function without restoring health, medieval death typically unfolds within the household, attended by family, guided by religious ritual, accepted as the natural conclusion to life rather than a medical failure to be postponed at all costs. The family provides physical care according to their best understanding, positioning to ease breathing difficulties, small sips of water or broth to maintain hydration, herbal preparations to reduce pain when available. Religious figures provide spiritual care, last rites, prayers, assurance of divine mercy. Community members visit to say farewells, to offer support to the family, to begin the transition of the dying person from the community of the living to the honored dead. The process of dying, like that of healing, follows its own timeline rather than external schedules. Family members take turns sitting with the dying person, ensuring they are never alone during the transition. Candles may be lit, prayers recited continuously. The priest called when death seems imminent to provide final blessings. The moment of death itself is recognized through physical signs, understood by those who have witnessed previous deaths. The change in breathing pattern, the cooling of extremities, eventually the cessation of breath and pulse. After death comes the community ritual of preparing the body, washing, dressing in clean clothes if available, arranging the limbs, sometimes placing objects of spiritual significance with the deceased. The body remains in the home for a period of time, typically overnight at minimum, sometimes longer, depending on local custom and practical considerations, like weather conditions. During this time, family members keep vigil, neighbors visit to pay respects, prayers are offered for the soul of the departed. The grave is dug by community members, if in the village cemetery, by monastery staff if burial takes place on religious grounds. The body, wrapped in cloth if the family can afford it, is carried to the burial place in procession, accompanied by family, neighbors, and religious figures. Prayers and ritual words mark the transition as earth covers the deceased, returning the physical form to the elements, while the soul journeys according to religious understanding. These rituals of death and burial represent not just religious practice, but public health measures developed through observation across generations. The washing of the body, originally a ritual of purification, serves also to reduce potential contagion. The relatively prompt burial prevents decomposition that might spread disease. The gathering of the community acknowledges shared grief, while also allowing assessment of whether the deceased suffered from a condition that might threaten others, prompting preventive measures if a contagious illness is suspected. For the family, the death of a member prompts not just emotional grief, but practical reorganization. Tasks performed by the deceased must be reassigned, skills they possessed perhaps taught to others if no one already has them, their physical space within the home repurposed as needed. This reorganization is not callous disregard for the departed, but necessary adaptation in a world where survival depends on each household member contributing according to their ability. Prayers are offered for their souls on significant dates, the anniversary of death, religious holidays, family milestones. Their tools or personal items may be repurposed, carrying their memory into daily activities. Their knowledge, including medical wisdom they possessed, continues to inform family and community practice. Their experiences with illness and treatment becoming part of the collective understanding of health and healing. This integration of the dead within ongoing community life reflects the medieval understanding of human existence as part of a continuum that extends beyond physical life on Earth. The deceased remain connected to the living through memory, through prayers offered for their souls, through the continuing impact of their knowledge and labor on family and community well-being. Their medical experiences, which treatments helped them, which failed, how they responded to various approaches, become part of the accumulated wisdom that guides care for future generations. For you, recovering from your fever in your medieval village, this continuum stretches backward and forward through time. The remedies that eased your symptoms were refined through countless prior experiences, some ending in recovery like yours, others in death that prompted reevaluation of approaches. Your own experience now joins this accumulation, potentially informing treatment for others who develop similar symptoms in the future. The knowledge gained, both by you personally and by those who cared for you, becomes part of the community's medical inheritance, transmitted through practice and oral tradition to subsequent generations. Children learn by observing parents and neighbors responding to illness, by helping gather and prepare medicinal plants, by hearing stories of previous illnesses and recoveries. Specialized knowledge passes through more structured relationships. The village wise woman might take a younger woman as assistant, teaching plant identification, preparation methods, diagnostic approaches, treatment variations. Religious houses maintain written medical texts, copied and sometimes expanded by monks with particular interest or experience in healing. These various transmission methods ensure that medical knowledge, while imperfect by modern standards, maintains continuity across generations while also adapting to local conditions and experiences. The core understanding, which plants have medicinal properties, how to prepare and apply them, which symptoms indicate improvement or deterioration, how to care for specific conditions, remains relatively stable across medieval Europe, with regional variations reflecting available materials, cultural influences, and particular disease patterns. The wise woman who serves your village knows not just which plants generally help fever, but which grow locally, when to harvest them for maximum potency, how to prepare them according to available tools and materials, how to adjust dosage based on the patient's age and condition. This localization of general principles to specific circumstances represents a sophisticated adaptation to the constraints of medieval life. As the seasons continue their cycle, you move further from your illness experience, strength fully restored, the memory of fever fading into the background of daily life. The knowledge gained remains, which remedies helped, how long recovery took, which symptoms accompanied this particular fever, becoming part of your personal medical wisdom to be applied when illness next visits your household. The experience has left you neither weaker nor stronger in any measurable physical sense, but perhaps more knowledgeable, more attuned to your body's signals, more prepared for future health challenges. This integration of illness and recovery into the normal flow of life characterizes the medieval experience of health. Unlike the modern separation of medical care from daily existence, the special buildings, specialized practitioners, distinct terminology that mark healthcare as something apart from ordinary life, medieval healing remains embedded in the household and community, administered primarily by family. Members using knowledge and materials available to all. Specialized healers, the wise woman, the monk physician, the barber surgeon, supplement this household-based care rather than replacing it. Unlike modern pharmaceuticals developed in laboratories, manufactured in factories, and dispensed through specialized pharmacies, medieval remedies derive primarily from the local environment. Plants gathered from field and forest, minerals collected from streams or springs, animal products from domesticated or hunted species. The connection between healing substances and the surrounding landscape is direct and visible. The plants that treat illness often growing within sight of the homes they serve. The changing of seasons brings shifts in available remedies and treatment approaches. Spring offerings, new growth rich in vitamins after winter scarcity, might be incorporated into treatments as well as regular diet. Summer abundance allows for fresh application of plants that lose potency when dried. Autumn prompts gathering and preservation of medicinal materials for winter use. Winter itself limits fresh materials, but allows time for processing preserved remedies, grinding dried herbs to powder, steeping roots in alcohol or vinegar to extract their properties, rendering animal fat for use as a base for salves and ointments. These seasonal activities become part of the annual rhythm of household and community life, as regular as planting and harvest, as integrated in daily existence as food preparation and tool maintenance. Children learn the patterns early, which plants to gather and when, how to recognize them at various growth stages, which parts contain the medicinal properties, how to process and preserve them for future use. This knowledge becomes as fundamental as knowing how to kindle fire or preserve food, essential skills for household survival rather than specialized expertise. The integration of medical knowledge with general life skills reflects the medieval understanding of health as interconnected with all aspects of existence, rather than a separate domain requiring specialized intervention. Diet, physical activity, rest patterns, social relationships, spiritual practices, all are understood to influence health and healing, though the mechanisms remain mysterious by modern scientific standards. This holistic view recognizes connections that modern medicine sometimes overlooks in its focus on specific biological processes and targeted interventions. Diet adjusts with the seasons, not just from necessity based on available foods, but from understanding that the body's needs change with external conditions. More calories needed in cold weather and during heavy physical labor, different vegetables and fruits appropriate at different times of year. Certain combinations believed to maintain proper humoral balance. Physical activity follows natural rhythms. Intense labor during planting and harvest. More moderate work during winter months. Periods of rest built into the daily and weekly schedule through nightfall and religious observance. Preventive practices, while not systematized as in modern public health, nonetheless form part of this integrated approach to health. Homes are kept as clean as practical, given available tools and materials, with periodic deep cleaning at culturally significant times, such as before major religious festivals. Personal hygiene focuses on areas visible to others and involved in daily activities, hands, face, hair, with less attention to areas covered by clothing. Waste disposal follows patterns developed through observation of what reduces illness. Latrines placed downstream and downwind from living quarters. Animal waste composted for agricultural use rather than left to accumulate near homes. When preventive measures fail and illness occurs, the response draws on this same integrated understanding. Treatment addresses not just physical symptoms, but the whole person within their community context. Fever receives attention through cooling measures and herbal remedies, but also through adjustment of diet, provision of appropriate rest conditions, spiritual interventions such as prayer, and sometimes objects believed to provide protection or healing. The patient is understood not as a biological system requiring technical intervention, but as a person whose illness affects and is affected by all aspects of their existence. Without the ability to target specific pathogens or repair particular biological mechanisms, treatment necessarily addresses the whole person and their environment. This can prove surprisingly effective for certain conditions. Rest, hydration, and nutritional support, giving the body's own healing mechanisms the best chance to overcome infection. Stress reduction and community support, improving recovery outcomes through mechanisms now recognized by psychoneuroimmunology, certain herbal remedies providing genuine pharmacological benefits, discovered through generations of observation. The limitations become apparent with conditions requiring specific interventions, beyond the body's own healing capacity. The infected wound that needs antibiotics to prevent sepsis. The blocked intestine that requires surgical intervention. The bacterial pneumonia that will progress without targeted treatment. In these cases, the holistic approach may provide comfort and support, but cannot address the underlying cause effectively, leading to outcomes far worse than would be expected with modern medical care. Between these extremes lie the many conditions where medieval approaches might prove partially effective, providing symptomatic relief if not cure, supporting the body's natural healing processes, offering comfort during recovery or when cure is not possible. The bitter herbs that reduce fever or pain, the poultices that draw infection from wounds, the diet modifications that ease digestive distress. These represent genuine therapeutic interventions based on observed effectiveness across generations, even without understanding of the biochemical mechanisms involved. You don't distinguish sharply between medical knowledge and other aspects of daily life. The plants that provide food may also provide medicine. The activities that complete necessary work also maintain physical strength and function. The community relationships that ensure mutual support during labor-intensive tasks also provide care during illness. Health is not a separate domain requiring specialized intervention, but an aspect of life managed primarily through the same knowledge and relationships that address all other needs. This integration characterizes the medieval approach to medicine at its most fundamental level. Without the scientific understanding that allows modern healthcare to target specific biological processes, medieval healing necessarily addresses the whole person within their physical and social environment. Without the technological capacity to override the body's natural processes, it works primarily by supporting those processes, providing conditions conducive to healing, removing obstacles to recovery when possible, offering comfort when cure lies beyond the available means. This approach, working with natural processes rather than overriding them, addressing the whole person rather than isolated biological systems, integrating healing within community rather than separating the ill for specialized treatment, reflects not just the limitations of medieval medicine but its underlying philosophy. Health represents proper functioning within the natural order, illness disruption of that functioning, healing the restoration of proper relationship between the individual and the broader physical and metaphysical reality they inhabit. For you and your medieval community, this philosophical framework provides meaning and context for the experience of illness and healing. Your fever, while physically unpleasant and potentially dangerous, makes sense within this understanding, perhaps attributed to imbalance of humors, to unseasonable weather that disrupted normal bodily functioning, to miasma from stagnant water, or to any number of explanations that fit observed patterns. The remedies applied, cooling measures, bitter herbs, rest, supportive care, similarly make sense as efforts to restore proper balance and function, to support the body's natural healing processes, to reestablish right relationship with the physical and spiritual world. This coherent framework for understanding illness and healing stands as one of the genuine achievements of medieval medicine. Without the scientific method or technological tools of modern healthcare, medieval healers nonetheless developed a systematic approach to promoting health and treating illness. They carefully observed which interventions appeared to help or harm passed this knowledge through generations, refined understanding through accumulated experience, and integrated healing practices within the broader context of community life and spiritual understanding. The limitations of this approach become starkly apparent when compared with modern medical capabilities. Infections that now respond quickly to antibiotics might prove fatal. Conditions requiring surgical intervention often led to death or permanent disability. Vitamin deficiencies, parasitic infections, and contagious diseases spread unchecked by modern public health measures. Childbirth and early childhood represented periods of enormous risk, with mortality rates unimaginable in developed countries today. Yet within these severe constraints, medieval communities developed sophisticated systems for caring for the ill, for supporting recovery when possible, for maintaining function when cure was not an option, for providing comfort when death approached. They created explanatory frameworks that offered meaning for suffering when it could not be prevented. They integrated healthcare within community life rather than isolating it as a specialized function, ensuring that basic medical knowledge was widely distributed and healing resources generally accessible. This balanced understanding of medieval healthcare, acknowledging both its genuine achievements and its significant limitations, offers perspective on our modern medical experience. The scientific advances of recent centuries have transformed human health possibilities, extending lifespans and eliminating or controlling diseases that devastated earlier populations. Yet aspects of medieval approaches to health and illness may offer valuable insights for contemporary healthcare. The integration of the ill within community rather than their isolation, the widespread distribution of basic medical knowledge, the understanding of healing as a process involving spiritual and social dimensions alongside physical interventions. Injuries accumulate, some healing completely, others leaving permanent limitations that shape your activities. Chronic conditions develop and progress, managed as best possible with available remedies. The knowledge passed to you by parents and community is supplemented by your own observations and experiences, creating a personal medical wisdom that serves you and those you care for. This lived experience of health and illness in medieval Europe, so different from our modern expectation of diagnosis, treatment, and cure, shaped not only physical outcomes, but cultural attitudes toward the body, toward suffering, toward mortality itself. The acceptance of physical limitation and pain as normal aspects of human experience, the integration of illness within daily life rather than its separation into medical institutions, the understanding of healing as a process involving spiritual and community dimensions alongside physical interventions. All these represent not simply the absence of modern medicine, but the presence of a different framework for understanding health and illness. And so you sleep, your body continuing its quiet work of healing, your place in family and community, secure despite your temporary incapacity. The knowledge that supported your recovery, passed down through generations, refined through observation, applied with care by those who tend you, continues its slow evolution, accumulating in small increments with each illness and recovery throughout the village. It is medicine without laboratories or textbooks, but not without intelligence or compassion. It is healthcare without hospitals or credentials, but not without wisdom or community support. This is how medieval peasants survived getting sick without modern medicine, through knowledge passed across generations, through community care structures, through careful observation of what helped and what harmed, through remedies derived from available plants and materials, through acceptance of limitations alongside persistent efforts to heal, through integration of the ill within family and community life, rather than their isolation. It was healthcare defined by its constraints, but also by its humanity, by treatments of limited efficacy, but delivered with intimate knowledge of the individual, by explanatory frameworks that often misidentified causes but still offered meaning and context for suffering. As you drift deeper into sleep, your fever now just a memory, your strength gradually returning, you represent one small success in this ancient system of care. Not the dramatic cure of modern medical intervention, but the quiet recovery supported by family knowledge, community resources, and the body's own remarkable healing capacity. Tomorrow will bring a return to normal routines, to the work that sustains your household through the seasons. Your recent illness becomes part of your personal history, and that of your village, one small thread in the complex tapestry of medieval medical experience. The routines of daily life absorb you once again, tending crops, caring for animals, maintaining the small cottage that shelters your family. The illness recedes in memory, becoming just one of many physical experiences that punctuate your existence. Yet the knowledge gained remains, incorporated into your understanding of your body, of healing, of the plants and practices that support recovery. You recognize the tight, dry sound that suggests the early stages of what your community calls the winter cough, a respiratory illness that ranges from mild irritation to life-threatening infection, depending on who it affects and how it progresses. Having experienced similar symptoms in previous years, you know which plants might help ease the cough before it settles deep in the chest. Its aromatic leaves contain compounds that help relax the airways and reduce coughing spasms, though you understand this only in terms of observed effectiveness rather than chemical properties. You steep the leaves in hot water, adding a small amount of honey from the village beekeeper, if your family can afford this luxury, or perhaps a bit of dried apple for sweetness, if honey is beyond reach. At night, you place a small bundle of dried thyme under her sleeping pallet, its aromatic compounds subtly entering the air she breathes throughout the night. You also show her how to breathe steam from water heated with pine needles, the resinous vapor helping to open congested airways and ease the tight feeling in the chest that accompanies the cough. These remedies represent the first line of defense against winter respiratory ailments, treatments available to virtually every household, requiring no specialized knowledge beyond what is commonly passed from parent to child, needing no ingredients that cannot be gathered from the surrounding environment. They address the symptoms, the cough itself, the chest tightness, the sore throat that often accompanies such illness, rather than the underlying cause, which remains unknown in the absence of microscopic identification of viral or bacterial pathogens. For many cases, these simple remedies prove sufficient. The body's own immune response, supported by rest, warm shelter, adequate food, and herbal treatments that ease symptoms, overcomes the infection. The cough gradually diminishes, energy returns, normal activities resume. This pattern of illness and recovery repeats countless times across the village and throughout the region. each instance adding incrementally to the collective understanding of which approaches help and which do not. Some progress from simple cough to more serious infection, the lungs filling with fluid, breathing becoming labored, fever rising as the body struggles to overcome the invading pathogen. These cases require more intensive intervention, drawing on the specialized knowledge of the village-wise woman, or in more prosperous regions, perhaps a monk physician from a nearby religious house. The treatments for these more serious cases build on the same foundation: herbal remedies, supportive care, rest, but with greater intensity and additional elements drawn from specialized knowledge. The wise woman might prepare stronger decoctions of plants, known for their effect on respiratory infections, perhaps mullein to help clear mucus from the lungs, elecampane root for its expectorant properties, horehound to help loosen chest congestion. These stronger remedies require more careful preparation and dosage, their potential both for benefit and harm greater than the milder household treatments. The patient might be positioned to facilitate drainage from the lungs, supported in a semi-upright position rather than lying flat. The chest might be rubbed with salves containing aromatic compounds, camphor from traded materials if available, more commonly pine resin or strong-smelling herbs like rosemary or sage mixed with rendered animal fat as a carrier. Warm compresses might be applied to the chest to ease pain and encourage productive coughing. Throughout this more intensive treatment, the basic elements of care remain the same as for milder illness: adequate hydration, appropriate nutrition, sufficient rest, protection from cold or other environmental stress. The family continues to provide most of the hands-on care, with the specialized healer offering guidance, preparing more complex remedies, monitoring progress, and suggesting adjustments to treatment as the illness evolves. The prognosis for these more serious respiratory infections varies greatly depending on the patient's age, overall health, and the specific pathogen involved. Factors understood in medieval terms, very different from modern medical language. The very young and very old face higher risk, their bodies less resilient against the infection's onslaught. Those already weakened by poor nutrition, previous illness, or chronic conditions similarly face greater danger. Some respiratory pathogens prove more virulent than others, causing more severe symptoms or spreading more rapidly through the body. Strength returns gradually over weeks rather than days. The cough may persist long after other symptoms have resolved, the lungs slowly clearing the residue of infection. Appetite takes time to fully recover, the body's resources depleted by the extended battle against disease. Full return to normal activities might take a month or more, with gradual resumption of responsibilities as strength permits. No one expects immediate return to full function after serious illness. Tasks are redistributed among family and sometimes neighbors until the affected person regains sufficient strength for their normal work. This accommodation reflects both practical necessity. Premature return to strenuous activity might trigger relapse, and the medieval understanding of healing as a gradual process requiring time and patience. For those who do not survive serious respiratory infection, the progression follows a pattern grimly familiar to medieval communities. Breathing becomes increasingly labored, the skin taking on a bluish tinge as oxygen levels fall. Fever may spike and then drop suddenly as the body's defenses falter. Consciousness fades as the brain receives insufficient oxygen. Death comes most often during the night, when the body's resources are at their lowest ebb. The transition sometimes peaceful, sometimes marked by desperate gasping as the lungs fail in their essential function. This outcome, while dreaded, is accepted as one possible result of serious illness in a world where effective treatments for many conditions lie beyond available knowledge and resources. The community responds according to established patterns. Family members prepare the body for burial. Neighbors help dig the grave. Religious figures provide the appropriate rituals. Everyone adjusts to the absence of the deceased and the community's functioning. Grief finds expression within these structured responses without disrupting the essential work that sustains collective survival. Between the common mild respiratory ailments that resolve with simple household remedies and the severe infections that threaten life lies a spectrum of illness experiences that constitute a significant portion of medieval medical reality. These moderate infections, serious enough to cause concern and disrupt normal functioning, but not immediately life-threatening, prompt varying responses depending on family resources, available care providers, local medical traditions, and other contextual factors. A wealthy household might summon a physician trained in a monastic or university tradition, his approach informed by ancient Greek and Roman medical texts, preserved and transmitted through religious institutions or, in some regions, through Islamic scholars. This formally trained practitioner might apply treatments based on humoral theory, bloodletting to reduce excess blood believed to cause inflammation, purging to eliminate excess bile thought to contribute to fever, applications of hot or cold substances to balance the body's perceived temperature. Disruption. Her treatments might include similar elements, herbal preparations, dietary adjustments, physical interventions, but applied according to observed effectiveness rather than theoretical frameworks, with greater emphasis on locally available materials and treatments that families can continue without. Specialized assistance. These approaches, while limited in scope, nonetheless incorporate generations of observation about which simple interventions help with common symptoms, which plants offer genuine medicinal benefits, which care practices support the body's natural healing processes. Across this spectrum of care approaches, certain common elements appear consistently. Rest is universally recognized as essential to recovery. The body's need for reduced activity during illness, understood through observation, if not through knowledge of how sleep affects immune function. Hydration, while not conceptualized in modern terms of maintaining cellular function and flushing toxins, is recognized as important. Fever patients are encouraged to drink regularly. Special preparations like barley water or weak teas offered to those too ill to take normal food. Nutrition receives varying emphasis depending on the specific medical tradition and available resources. Some approaches emphasize restricted diet during acute illness, based on observation that the digestive system often functions poorly during fever. Others focus on providing special foods believed to strengthen the body, broths made from meat or bones, porridges of easily digestible grains, eggs when available, particular fruits or vegetables if the season permits. These nutritional approaches, while lacking the scientific understanding of specific vitamins, minerals, and macronutrients, nonetheless often provide genuine support for recovery through calories and nutrients that help the body fight infection. Temperature management forms another consistent element across different care traditions. Fever is generally understood as the body's response to illness, rather than as the illness itself, though the mechanisms remain unknown. Cooling measures for high fever, removing heavy coverings, applying cool cloths to the forehead or wrists, encouraging airflow around the patient, alternate with warming approaches for the chills that often accompany fever. This balanced approach, developed through observation of how bodies respond during illness, roughly parallels modern understanding of supporting the body's temperature regulation without extreme intervention. Pain management, limited by available materials, nonetheless forms an important component of medieval healthcare. Willow bark provides salicin, chemically related to aspirin, effective against headache and general pain. Meadowsweet offers similar compounds. Stronger pain relief comes from plants containing opiates, primarily poppy in various preparations, used cautiously due to recognized risks. Physical methods, positioning to reduce strain, simple massage, warm or cold applications, complement these plant-based pain relievers, offering additional comfort without pharmaceutical intervention. These various elements combine to form a system of care that, while lacking the precision and power of modern medicine, nonetheless offers genuine support for recovery from many common illnesses. The body's own healing mechanisms, given appropriate support through rest, nutrition, hydration, symptom management, and basic physical care, successfully overcome many infections and repair many injuries without the need for more advanced intervention. Where this system fails, most obviously, is with conditions that require specific interventions beyond supportive care. The bacterial infection that needs antibiotics, the appendicitis that requires surgery, the insulin deficiency of diabetes, the compromised immune system that cannot fight off opportunistic pathogens. In these cases, all the careful observation and accumulated wisdom of medieval medicine cannot compensate for the fundamental lack of necessary interventions, leading to outcomes far worse than would be expected with modern care. Between these two extremes, conditions where supportive care suffices and those that require specific modern interventions, lies a vast middle ground where medieval approaches achieve partial success. Wound care integrating cleansing, herbal applications with antimicrobial properties, and proper bandaging might prevent infection in many cases, though failing in others. Dietary and herbal treatments for digestive disorders might manage symptoms effectively while never addressing underlying causes like parasitic infection. Setting and binding broken bones might allow proper healing of simple fractures while leaving more complex injuries permanently disabling. This mixed effectiveness, combined with the inherent unpredictability of illness progression, creates the space where religious and magical elements enter medieval healthcare. When outcomes cannot be reliably predicted or controlled through available physical interventions, spiritual and supernatural explanations and responses gain importance. Rare religious rituals, pilgrimages to shrines associated with healing, protective amulets and talismans, all become part of the medieval medical repertoire, addressing the uncertainty and fear that accompany serious illness in a world without scientific understanding of disease processes. These spiritual and magical elements do not replace physical care, but complement it, operating alongside herbal remedies and practical nursing rather than instead of them. The same household might simultaneously administer herbal preparations, maintain appropriate physical care routines, offer prayers for healing, and place protective objects near the ill person. The local healer might combine practical treatments with words or gestures believed to channel healing power. The formally trained physician might consider astrological influences alongside humoral imbalances when developing treatment plans. This integration reflects the medieval worldview that does not sharply separate physical and spiritual reality, as modern thought often does. Illness affects the whole person, body, mind, spirit, and therefore requires response that addresses all these dimensions. Healing comes through multiple channels: plants with medicinal properties, appropriate physical care, divine intervention, correction of spiritual imbalances or transgressions. The effective healer works through whichever channels seem most appropriate to the specific situation, without the modern concern for separating scientific from non-scientific approaches. For you and your medieval community, this integrated approach to healing shapes both preventive practices and responses to active illness. Protective measures include physical components, maintaining basic cleanliness, preserving food properly, selecting appropriate clothing for weather conditions, alongside spiritual elements like regular prayer, participation in religious rituals believed to ensure divine protection, perhaps wearing amulets or performing certain actions to ward off malevolent influences. For your sister's cough, you prepare herbal remedies based on generations of observed effectiveness. You also ensure she gets appropriate rest, adequate fluids, and nutritious food as available. You or other family members might simultaneously offer prayers for her recovery, place protective objects near her sleeping place, perhaps perform simple rituals believed to draw harmful influences out of the body. This multifaceted approach, while differing significantly from modern medical practice in its understanding of disease causation and appropriate treatment, nonetheless represents a sophisticated response to illness within the constraints of medieval knowledge and resources. It recognizes the body's own healing capabilities and seeks to support these through appropriate physical care. It acknowledges the limits of available interventions and supplements these with spiritual and magical approaches that address the fear and uncertainty accompanying illness. It embeds healthcare within the community rather than isolating it as a specialized function, ensuring that basic medical knowledge is widely distributed and healing resources generally accessible. As your sister's cough gradually improves with the simple remedies you've provided, your family's confidence in these traditional approaches is reinforced. The knowledge passed down through generations has once again proven effective. The plants growing around your village once again demonstrated their healing properties. This successful outcome joins the vast, largely undocumented archive of medical experiences that collectively shape your community's understanding of health and illness, treatment and recovery. Had the outcome been different, had the cough worsened despite these measures, developing into more serious respiratory infection, different aspects of the medieval medical repertoire would have been activated. More specialized knowledge might have been sought from the village wise woman. More intensive spiritual interventions might have been attempted. Special prayers, promises of offerings if recovery occurred, Perhaps consultation with religious authorities about whether confession or other spiritual cleansing might be needed to remove obstacles to healing. This range of possible responses reflects the complexity of medieval healthcare rather than confusion or inconsistency. Different situations call for different approaches, the appropriate response determined by the nature and severity of the illness, the resources available to the affected household, the local medical traditions, and many other contextual factors. What remains consistent is the integration of physical care with spiritual and sometimes magical elements, the embedding of healthcare within family and community rather than its isolation as a specialized function, the reliance on knowledge passed through generations and refined through ongoing observation. Childhood illnesses receive particular attention in medieval healthcare traditions. The high mortality rates in these early years, driving careful observation of what helps and what harms, what patterns precede recovery, and what signs suggest deterioration. This attention produces genuinely effective practices alongside ineffective or harmful ones. The distinction not always clear without the benefit of modern scientific understanding. The rash that spreads from face to body, accompanied by fever and general discomfort, likely representing measles in modern terms. The painful swelling of the parotid glands that modern medicine identifies as mumps. The characteristic chickenpox lesions that progress from spots to blisters to scabs. These patterns allow caregivers to anticipate the likely course of illness, to prepare appropriate remedies, to recognize when progression deviates from expected patterns in ways that might signal danger. For these common childhood infections, medieval care focuses on supporting the body through the illness, rather than attempting to prevent or cure it directly. Comfort measures, appropriate positioning, cooling for fever, warm coverings for chills, soft foods for sore throats, form the foundation of care. Herbal remedies address specific symptoms. Teas for fever reduction, poultices for skin irritation, throat soothers for painful swallowing. Rest is emphasized, the child's normal activities curtailed until recovery is complete. Adequate hydration prevents the dangerous dehydration that can accompany fever and reduced oral intake. Proper nutrition supports immune function to the extent possible given available foods. Rest conserves energy for healing rather than activity. Basic comfort measures reduce the stress that might otherwise compromise recovery. Early intervention with expectorants to clear mucus from the lungs, with steam treatments to ease breathing, with positioning that facilitates drainage, can make the difference between recovery and serious progression. These approaches, developed through observation and across generations, represent genuine preventive care within the limitations of medieval knowledge and resources. For digestive complaints, similarly common in children due to limited understanding of food safety and the absence of clean water supplies, medieval care includes approaches that remain valid in modern treatment. Simple oral rehydration, encouraging small, frequent sips of liquid rather than large amounts that might trigger vomiting, helps prevent dangerous dehydration. Bland, easily digestible foods allow nutrition during recovery without overtaxing the irritated digestive system. Certain plant remedies, blackberry root or oak bark tea for diarrhea, mint or chamomile for stomach discomfort, provide genuine relief for specific symptoms. Honey, with its antimicrobial properties, might be applied to infected areas. Oatmeal baths soothe irritated skin. Poultices of specific plants, plantain, calendula, comfrey, address different types of skin irritation based on observed effectiveness over generations. These approaches, while less powerful than modern antibiotics for bacterial skin infections or corticosteroids for inflammatory conditions, nonetheless offer genuine benefit for many common childhood skin complaints. The overall approach to childhood illness in medieval healthcare balances recognition of children's vulnerability with awareness of their resilience. Children receive priority for available resources during illness, the most nutritious food the family can provide, the closest position to the fire for warmth, the most constant attention and care. Simultaneously, there is recognition that many survive childhood illnesses and emerge with apparent immunity to those specific infections, an observation that makes sense of the pattern without requiring understanding of antibodies and adaptive immunity. This balanced approach extends to the treatment of injuries, similarly common in children's active lives without modern safety measures. Minor cuts and scrapes receive cleaning with available materials, water boiled if possible, wine or ale if available, sometimes urine when nothing else is at hand, followed by application of poultices or salves with observed healing properties. Bandaging materials vary widely with household resources. Clean linen in wealthier families, whatever cloth can be spared in poorer households, sometimes leaves with natural antiseptic properties bound to the wound with available fibers.